Write like a man. Use a typewriter.
You wrote Gates of Fire, which is this beautiful, again, black and white, good guys are good, bad guys are bad, amazing story that everybody knows and loves. And then you go on to write about the Peloponnesian War. What motivated you to take such a jarring shift from one to the other?
It was the historical character of Alcibiades, who
Okay.
I've always been fascinated by. And I don't know, have you guys read Plato's Symposium?
I haven't.
Does that ring a bell at all?
I know of it. I have never read it.
I'm going to get into the weeds a little bit here because I know your readers are real writers, right?
Yeah.
The symposium in Greek means the drinking party. And Plato's Symposium is a short dialogue. It's maybe, 60 pages long. And it's about a party or an evening in ancient Athens in which I'll give you the long version of this. There's like illustrious people like Aristophanes is there, Socrates is there, a bunch of other people are there. And as they start their drinking, there's a doctor who's one of their buddies, and he says, after last night's debauch with you gentlemen, I cannot be responsible for the health if we drink like we did last night. So I propose something else instead of entertainment. He says, propose that we go around the table and each one of us makes a speech in praise of love. So that becomes the gist of the story. And it goes around the table, and the first speech is about love at its most physical. And each speech gets a little more highly evolved. And the last speech is by Socrates, where he really gets into the whole thing. But midway through the party, there's a disturbance outside in the yard, and a bunch of drunks arrive, friends, and they come in, and one of them is this character, Alcibiades. And as you read the symposium, I don't know, it's like Michael Jordan suddenly arrived or something like that.
Steals the show.
The guy is so electric, and he tells this story about trying to seduce Socrates physically, and getting him to sleep in his bed with him when Alcibiades was maybe 16 and Socrates was 40 or something.
He copulated an eel.
Very funny. It's very funny. It's very vivid. And one of the things about Alcibiades was they said that at every stage of his life, as a boy, as a youth, as a grown man, etc., he was the best looking person Athens had ever seen. Right. And he became, in the Peloponnesian War, he was a top general who was sentenced to death, defected to Sparta, turned the Spartans against the Athenians. Then the Spartans, condemned him to death. He defected to Persia. Then he defected to the Thracian. So he's just a really, really colorful guy. And I just thought, I got to write something about this guy. I got to try to do it. So the premise of Tides of War, as you know, is it's written by the guy who assassinated Alcibiades.
Yes.
Okay.
And he, of course, was a friend of his. So he's the point of view. So anyway, that's the long version, John, of why I wanted to do Tides of War. I just thought I got to do something with this character, Alcibiades.
Yeah,
that's great.
It's so cool. I love hearing about origin stories like that of books, because what you see is, there's an iceberg there. It's so much deeper than, just what you're seeing on the page.
Mm-hmm.
And Alcibiades is such a mercurial character. It's almost like he was too big for this world to properly contain him.
Yeah, he was. I mean, in many ways, I think of him as like a precursor to Alexander, in the sense that in all the battles he was in, he never lost a battle that he commanded in. But the difference between the two of them was Alexander was a king. Right. And so he had absolute legitimacy in Macedonia, whereas Alcibiades was a young guy in a crazy democracy. And democracies, as you know, love to set heroes up and then tear them down.
Mob rule.
And so the greater that, like, one of the things Alcibiades did was he entered more chariots in the race at Olympia as an individual that any other nation did, and he took first, second, and third. So he was like a superstar.
He took them all.
A superstar on the stage. And of course, it evoked jealousy. He had enemies. And So, but I really felt like if he could have been born like Alexander with a legitimacy of being a king, he would have conquered the world.
Who knows?
They were very, very similar in that they also were the first to strike the enemy. They were physically tremendously courageous, et cetera, et cetera.
I love hearing about that stuff.
This has been a kind of a cool history lesson actually for me, because I always, I've heard the name Alcibiades. I know that Patton was a fan of Alcibiades.
Yes,
but I never looked closely at who I thought he was. Just another philosopher. I thought he was another Plato or another Socrates. And I'm like, he's one of those guys. I'll get to him. But now I'm like, wow, I might end up reading the Symposium. That sounds
so. If you read, here's another assignment: read the Symposium by Plato.
I got it written down.
Okay. It's short. It's great, and also, of course, all of this story comes from Thucydides, the history of the Peloponnesian War. And he writes obviously about Alcibiades and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, it's a really colorful character.
I appreciate the recommendation. I'm definitely going to read that. That's the thing about talking with you, Steve, is that my reading, like this happened last time, I walked away with an expanded reading list, which I really appreciate.